Tamara Alrifai is the spokesperson for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. She joins us from Amman. Thank you for being with us on the program today. So UNRWA dismissed 9 employees. Does the organization have evidence that those employees were involved, indeed, in the October 7th attacks?
UNRWA received allegations from the Israeli government, and the Commissioner General of UNRWA deemed that it's in the interest of the 2 million people we're serving in Gaza and in the interest of the continuation of our life-saving and irreplaceable work in Gaza. He deemed it necessary to preemptively dismiss these staff members for the sake of everything else, but also for the sake of due diligence. The Commissioner General asked the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, to refer the situation to the highest investigation authority at the UN in New York. So we worked on several tracks together, with the primary goal being the continuation of our irreplaceable and life-saving work in Gaza.
Okay, so the 9 employees that were dismissed were preemptively dismissed. To be clear, does that mean you don't, or that you do currently have any evidence in their alleged involvement in the October 7th attacks?
That is correct. They were dismissed upon allegations preemptively, and an investigation is being opened at the UN headquarters in New York. And these now former employees will have the right of recourse in case the findings are in their favor.
I believe there were 2 employees who, as of the Secretary General's statement on Sunday, were still being identified. Have they been identified now?
Not yet, no. You know, we have 13,000 staff in Gaza. It takes a very, very complex review to be able to match names that we receive from the government of Israel with names of our employees. But if I may here remind that UNRWA shares the full list of names of its staff in Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, with Israel every year. So the list is known. The list of our staff is known to the government of Israel every year.
This is interesting. I think it's something our viewers might not know. All the people that UNRWA employs, including the 13,000 staff members in the Gaza Strip, Israel is aware of who works for you.
That is correct. We provide the names of our staff to the host authorities in the countries that we work in, so Jordan and Lebanon and Syria, and we also provide it to the State of Israel. And here I speak specifically of our employees in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and in Gaza.
And by the way, do they have a say in not staffing decisions, but when you provide that list, does Israel have any right of comment on who works for UNRWA?
The host governments and also the State of Israel may come back to us with concerns over staff when they receive the list. In the case of our staff in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, we have not received concerns by the State of Israel upon their receiving of these lists on an annual basis. But I also want to reiterate the sturdy recruitment and screening that we do to all our staff to ensure that we get proper recommendations for them and that their names do not match names of people listed on the UN Security Council's sanctions list. So we have a thorough and sturdy review before we recruit anyone.
What does it say to you that the biggest donors to this UN agency have pulled their funding, and that is the majority of the funding that goes to UNRWA has now been suspended based on allegations concerning 0.04% of your overall staff?
Well, you got the maths right. And so in response to that, we are pleading to our biggest donors, who are also our partners in ensuring that there's an adequate humanitarian operation in Gaza. We're pleading with them not to allow the humanitarian operation towards 2 million people to collapse. UNRWA has the largest footprint in Gaza. We run the shelters where more than 1 million people have sought refuge. We run the food and wheat flour distribution towards the entire population. There is no one, no agency, no humanitarian actor that can replace UNRWA, especially on such short notice. So our position is, please help us continue saving lives in Gaza and continue providing that level of relief, food, medical supplies, medical services to an entire population that is now dependent on humanitarian assistance.
The UN Secretary General mentioned in his statement on Sunday that UNRWA was not funded through the end of February. What happens if the funding does not resume? What happens, I mean, to the Palestinians that you help, specifically the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip?
The Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, but also the Palestinian refugees across the region, will no longer be able to get food, clean water, education, primary health services, and much more if UNRWA cannot sustain its operations beyond March. It is extremely serious for the well-being, for the rights of Palestine refugees to critical care, but also for regional stability. It is extremely critical that the largest humanitarian agency continues providing humanitarian assistance and continues to contribute to regional stability in a volatile environment. This is really not the time to stop funding to UNRWA and to threaten its ability to continue supporting millions, especially in Gaza today, where the war continues, the displacement continues, and the needs are so acute for us to for us to warn against famine.
I listened to what you say, and tell me if these dots can be connected in this way. You told me that you received, that UNRWA was working off Israeli evidence, I believe, based on staff, and that's why they were on the staff that were preemptively dismissed. So that would mean then that millions of Palestinians, including 2 million, a quarter of whom are facing starvation in the Gaza Strip, might not have any help from the biggest aid agency currently operating in the Gaza Strip based on Israeli evidence that has not been verified. Is that correct?
That is correct, but that does not diminish how seriously we take these allegations and how seriously the UN Secretary General takes them as well, hence his commissioning of an investigation into the case of these staff members, and hence also UNRWA commissioning an independent expert review to make sure that our internal safeguards against the possible implication of some of our staff members into political activities. We are doing all we can to ensure that our frameworks are sturdy and working, and that every single staff member of UNRWA, I'm talking here about 33,000 staff members, is truly working according to the UN values and principles, and that is working away from politics. We are extremely serious about making sure that every one of the 33,000 staff members works wholeheartedly, exclusively on humanitarian grounds. And so far, the 75 years of UNRWA speak to our ability to offer humanitarian assistance away from politics and in a way that has enabled generations of Palestine refugees to access critical basic health care, reach all vaccinations, educate over 2 million Palestinian children, some of whom work now at NASA and in reputable laboratories around the world, and reputable businesses and reputable enterprises. So we do have a lot of success stories that we want to be
Tamara,
able to continue. But more than that,
if I could jump in, there have been, in other cases, in other countries around the world where there is UN presence, United Nations presence, there have been documented cases of misconduct from UN staff, whether it's sexual misconduct, other types of misconduct, in ways that were very serious, that were documented, that were not allegations. And I don't recall that the funding was suspended for whether it was peacekeeping operations or humanitarian operations, depending on the case and the country. Why do you think, in UNRWA's case, all of a sudden most of your funding is pulled?
That is a question to ask our donors, and our position is to ask our donors to continue to stand by us, especially that our added value to the lives of Palestine refugees and to the current situation in Gaza have long been documented. This current conflict showed the irreplaceable role that UNRWA plays. It is our trucks that bring in the humanitarian assistance. It is our people that distribute wheat flour in shelters. It is our people who are themselves displaced in shelters that have been working even though they themselves are displaced. It is our doctors that continue to give medical services through mobile clinics in Gaza. If that is not testimony to the hard work and the success of UNRWA against all odds, I don't know what would be testimony.
Tamara Alrifai, spokesperson for UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. Thank you for joining us in the program.
Thank you.